Mr Speaker, New Zealand women want some answers as well. They want some answers, and they want the Prime Minister to help them find out those answers about where Pansy Wong was when she was supposed to be defending the rights and the responsibilities of New Zealand women in her role as the Minister of Women's Affairs. Because we've just heard today, Mr Speaker, that in fact just since she's been Minister alone, that Pansy Wong was in fact in China, we know now, on 6 occasions. 6 occasions between November 2008 and September the 10th. That's how many times she's been in China, while she should have been here in New Zealand defending the decision of that government to close down the Pay and Employment Equity Unit. Where was she when that unit was being closed down? As the Minister, she should have been in Cabinet arguing against that, but perhaps she was over in China aiding and abetting her husband's private business opportunities instead. Where was she when the government decided, not long after she went on the private trip, the taxpayer-funded private trip to do private business in November 2008, where was she while her government was making a decision to stop pay equity audits for school support staff and for social workers? Because that's another decision that she should have been fending off as in her role as the Minister of Women's Affairs. And where was she when her government decided to scrap the contributions to the New Zealand Superannuation Fund, which will disproportionately disadvantage women who we know, because they earn less during their lifetime, are absolutely dependent on superannuation funding for the future? Where was Pansy Wong standing up for New Zealand women when that decision was made? Perhaps that was one of her 6 trips to China while she was Minister. And when were those 6 trips to China? Well, we know about the November 2008 one because Pansy told the Prime Minister about that. She said, I was there, taxpayer funding, but my partner was actually using taxpayer funding. Her husband was using taxpayer funding to aid and abet his private business opportunities. So we know about that, November 2008. But she was back in China in April 2009. Then she was back again in August 2009, just a few months later. Back again in June 2010 to China, and back again just 1 month later in July 2010, and then again in September 2010. So I think New Zealand women are looking to the Prime Minister to stop hiding Pansy Wong, have her come out and answer the questions about why was she in China that many times, 5 of those times on ministerial visits. 5 of those times on ministerial visits. And I would like to know where she was when her ministry was giving advice to that government that their bills that extend unfair dismissals to all workplaces was going to disproportionately affect women because of the breaks that they have in employment. Where was she when the 4th weeks of annual leave, which most women will find attractive to actually cash up because they earn less than men do, where was she when her ministry was trying to convince that government not to do that on behalf of New Zealand women workers? And where was she when early childhood education funding was cut by her government? Was she there advocating the interests of children and women as the Minister of Women's Affairs? Or was she in China aiding and abetting the private business interests of her husband? Those are the decisions, those are the questions, Mr Key, that New Zealand women need to have answered, because she was supposed to be advocating for New Zealand women in New Zealand to try and actually make sure that women weren't disadvantaged during this recessionary period. Well, she has failed, and we know she has failed in that because the Global Gender Report, Gap Report, that came out just a few months ago told us that New Zealand started sliding backwards in terms of internationally where women stack up with regard to the Gender Gap Report internationally. And we know that she's failed because the Human Rights Commission recently published a census on women's participation. And again, we see the slide going backwards for New Zealand women, while the Minister of Women's Affairs was where?
Using her office for
6 times in China, also in Australia, also in the United States, also in Japan, and she needs to front up and tell New Zealand women and the New Zealand public what she was doing on those Prime Minister-approved trips because the Prime Minister just confirmed for us today that he approved on 11 occasions in 2 years, for the Minister of Women's Affairs to be not in New Zealand defending women's interests, but overseas.
Honourable David Carter.